that's it for short topics.
Yeah, good stuff there.
You know what that means, Rob?
I do know what it means, Dave, and I'm quietly going internally berserk. It's very exciting, actually, because we've been looking forward to doing this for a month.
Yeah, look, listeners, for those who don't follow us on Twitter, we have been doing a lot of exchanges, and we've also had a lot of private conversations, because sometimes when we do these picks, or we're doing 5 best alien worlds or thoughts about this story, there are some obvious places to go or some obvious directions we expect from each other. This one, the idea of putting new Who Doctors into classic stories feels so off the wall. I had no idea where I was going to go with these, and some of them I really would not have known where I was going to land on these, and so I'm really curious just to know where you went and whether we went down some similar paths or some incredibly different paths.
Yeah, I've said to you, and when listeners, when we say we talk, we don't actually tell each other what we're thinking in terms of the actual stories and stuff, so I'm still in the dark. But I have said to you, Dave, that one of mine, I believe, is just off the wall nuts. I think it's the craziest idea I've ever had in 6 years of making the Doctor Who show, in 7 years of doing Who Wars and the Doctor Who show. Been doing this game a long time, and I think this is still my craziest thought in podcasting. Yeah,
I reckon that 2 of mine are incredibly obvious and could potentially be snaps. One of them is reasonably obvious, and the other 2 are completely off the wall. So, interesting to see if you think the same thing when we get to them, and you can pick which ones were obvious. But look, we're skating around the issue, Rob.
Yes, we are.
Let's put some new Who Doctors into classic stories.
Okay, who goes first? Should we toss a coin or something? Do you have a coin?
I don't think I've... Oh, no, I must have a coin somewhere on my desk.
This is live, people.
So, Rob, I've got a 10-cent coin I literally just picked up off the floor. There's serendipity for you.
Yes.
Would you like a Queen Elizabeth II or a lyrebird?
I would like a lyrebird, because tails never fails.
It's heads.
There you go. What would you like to do?
I will send you into bat.
Send me into bat? Oh, gosh, okay, the pressure's on. Christopher Eccleston is the first Doctor, first cab off the rank, and I think he was my hardest to place.
He was my easiest.
Oh, okay, so we're already conflicting. Because the Eccleston Doctor, to me, presents as this radically different kind of thing to what's gone before. And so I can't easily deploy some of the tricks that I'm going to deploy later on when we get to Smith, Capaldi, Whittaker. Even at the time of the series being made, Eccleston said he wasn't as, quote, as eccentric and foppish as he was in some of his other incarnations. And RTD even characterised the character as a stripped-down version of previous Doctors. So when I look at what makes Eccleston tick, it's that I guess he's happy to be alive and moving forward. He's not wanting to really dwell on the past. So although that's PTSD driven, I think it creates this kind of upbeat persona that this Doctor wants to be, even if he doesn't feel it genuinely all the time. He's wanting to get out there, and he wants to meet the aliens, and he just wants to experience things. I'm thinking of the end of the world there, for example. And, I sort of let all this trickle down into my head, and I thought, given the way Eccleston seemed to do well back in time with Dickens, or in World War II with The Empty Child, I think I'd like to push him towards an historical. And when we think historicals, we think the first Doctor primarily and a little bit of the second Doctor. So I'm actually going to push him into The Massacre.
Wow.
Yeah, because I think this is a heavy kind of topic that I think the Ninth Doctor could get into. Quite how the logistics work out, like would he actually be a good double for the Abbot? I'm not so sure about that. Would Rose be convincing, going off making friends with some Huguenots? I don't know about that. So it probably needs some tweaking. But yeah, I think Eccleston back in time for a big event like The Massacre would be really good.
I think that would be really good, and I think that Christopher Eccleston would be amazing as the Abbot of Amboise.
There you go. I was thinking more in terms of his look, more so than his acting ability.
Look, he would not be wearing a leather jacket in that part of the role. And probably have a wig on, but that's okay. That's period. That's okay. Well, I went in a hugely different direction with Christopher Eccleston, and when I first sat down to start thinking about where I was going to go with my picks, this was the one that just popped into my head and seemed so incredibly obvious.
Yes.
I think about Christopher Eccleston as that strong doctor, PTSD, confrontational, and I am going to put him into Genesis of the Daleks.
Oh,
Can you imagine Christopher Eccleston confronting Davros? Can you imagine him doing the "Do I have the right" speech? Can you imagine him at the very end doing the "From that comes something good" speech? All of those sort of things, I just think he would give such a powerful performance. That moment in part 4 of I Sent Them Both In There, just really good gravitas, that really strong character that he brings to the role. I think that his PTSD would work well in that Khaled Thal war, and I just think, to me, this one made so much sense.
Yeah, look, is this informed to some degree by the fact he is strong in a Dalek story in his one and only series?
Oh, absolutely. I think that I am transplanting his confrontation with the Dalek from Dalek straight into Genesis of the Daleks. I think there's a really strong link there, and I could just see him being amazing in that story.
Yeah, gee, that's good. But we've gone in completely different directions today.
Completely different. So there you go.
Yeah, no snaps there.
No snaps there. So
No.
I'll kick us off with David Tennant.
Yes.
And I like David Tennant when he gets to be dramatic but serious. I don't like flippy David Tennant. I like scared David Tennant, moral David Tennant, angry David Tennant, and therefore, strangely enough, not a shock, I'm putting him into a Davo story because I think that the two of them can sort of fill each other's shoes quite well.
Yes.
And in particular, I'm putting him into Earthshock.
Oh, okay. Not a snap?
Not a snap. So David Tennant exploring the caves, I think would be... He'll be perfect at that, like, ooh, a brontosaurus skeleton, ooh, a hatch, you know. He'll do all that sort of thing. But then you get that David Tennant that has to confront the cyber leader, the David Tennant that has to manage Tegan, the David Tennant that has to deal with the death of Adric. I just think that, you know, David Tennant is a really, really good and capable actor. Really capable actor. I don't like everything he does in the role of the Doctor, but when he has to act, he's really, really good. And I think Earthshock would let him act the full spectrum of his character really, really well.
Yeah. Yeah, look, I can see that. It's a million miles from where I've gone because I'm about to do my absolutely crazy suggestion. But yeah,
it works, doesn't it?
It does work. I'm tossing around so many little things in my head I can't form coherent sentences. Just yeah, I like that. I like that a lot.
So your crazy one, Rob, is it going to be something like the Pescatons or something?
No, it's not the Pescatons. Look, this one was almost as hard for me as Eccleston was in some ways. You know, I sit here and think, well, what makes Dave? You know, not you, but Dave Tennant. And there are aspects I think of, but I don't necessarily want to think of. Like, I think of the whole lonely god shtick. You know, I didn't like that. I think of the Time Lord Victorious stuff, and I'm not so hot on that. I think of the lovey-dovey stuff with Rose. I'm not really interested in that. So I gravitate, when I think of Tennant and what I think is the best of Tennant, to the sort of Tennant we see with Donna.
Yes.
Now, something like the Agatha Christie episode, perhaps, because it's almost slapstick in places, like where he's poisoned and he's saying, you know, I need salt, you know, and he's pointing at things in the kitchen and he's dancing around, and that's extremely slapstick. And they're having this wild, bloody adventure with Agatha Christie and a giant wasp and all sorts of crazy stuff going on. And when I transpose that to classic Who, I really surprised myself because here it comes. I'm landing in the Sylvester McCoy era.
Okay.
And I'm landing in the early Sylvester McCoy era.
Okay.
And I'm landing in Delta and the Bannermen.
Keep going, I can't do anything but laugh.
Because we've already seen Tennant do all right in the 50s, like in The Idiot's Lantern.
Yeah.
And I think he'd blend into the holiday camp quite well.
Sorry, I'm still laughing. Keep going.
He'd blend into the holiday camp quite well. I think he'd enjoy himself with the rock and roll and the motorbikes, and you know the really bonkers aliens.
Yep, flirting with Ray.
If flirting with Ray, I don't even have that in my notes, but yes, absolutely. And in some ways, the campy nature of Delta isn't a million miles away from RTD stuff in general. That said, I realise this is probably the last story that listeners were thinking of for Tennant. But when we strip away a lot of the stuff about his doctor that I think can be off-putting, like I mentioned earlier, I just land here at Delta. And maybe I can't believe I've landed here, but I've landed here. Dave, save me.
No, look, it's a really funny pick, and I really like where you've gone with that. But I can see it. I can imagine him arriving at Shangri-La and, oh, it's a holiday camp. I love a holiday camp. Ooh, yeah. And doing all of that sort of thing and getting into it, flirting with Ray, having some fun. But also, you can imagine Tennant giving that end of part 2 speech to Gavrock. I came under a flag of truce and I'll leave under a flag of truce and woe betide. You could see Tennant doing that. I actually think that, as funny as it is, and I am still giggling at it, I actually can see it working really, really well.
Yeah, I think he could do it beautifully, and as I say, he would be acting to all the things I like to see him do, like the slapstick stuff, the bonkers sort of stuff, and just getting away from the stuff that leaves me a bit cold.
The one thing that would be interesting, and I wonder if they would change it for this, is that Delta is famous because obviously Delta leaves with Billy at the end. And, Delta probably wasn't going to leave with Sylvester McCoy. But if Delta's meeting the Doctor, does that become a bit of a love triangle, or is Billy going to have to compete with David Tennant to get the girl?
Oh, wow, that's delicious. I think what you do is Delta is into Tennant, but Tennant doesn't realise, he's a bit oblivious.
Yeah.
And Billy is very jealous of Tennant, but Tennant's not trying at all, Yeah. Tennant's got no interest, he's not trying, and Billy's just infuriated by him. I think that could be a fun sort of thing.
Yeah, no, you could definitely do a lot with that. And I'm now sort of wondering which companion you'd put in there as well to replace Mel. And Donna could be a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah. I think she'd play it up, as a comedian. I think she'd get into it,
Well, that is off the wall, Rob, but no, that's very cool.
Great.
My next one was my hardest one. And
right.
That is because, again, I was trying to nail the Matt Smith Doctor down into a shape that I thought could be transposed neatly into a story, and I was kind of going all over the place, and so I thought, okay, what is it that I really like about Matt Smith, and when do I really like him?
Yes.
I like him when he's exploring, and he's excited to be exploring something new, something alien, something different.
Yeah.
And I like him when he gets to be moral, and you get that quieter, that very low Matt Smith, just the, you're not supposed to do that. That's not how it works. You're not a good person. That very subtle Matt Smith, I think, is really, really good. So I'm going to put him into a Pertwee story.
Okay.
One where he gets to both be moral and to explore. And that is Colony in Space.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So bear with me here, because I guess this probably was not a natural pick.
No, not at all, actually.
But the opening part of Colony in Space, walking around the alien world and just being excited to be exploring an alien world, I think he's great, Matt Smith. Then when he meets the colonists and all that stuff about, you should have a thriving colony. I don't know why this isn't working. He can explore and he can investigate and he can do all that. Then he gets to confront IMC and he can be the moral voice of the story. Then exploring the primitive city, again, where he's really, really strong. Those confrontations, both in the middle and at the end of the story, with the Guardian of the City, where again you need that real doctorish gravitas, that real sense of moral righteousness that the Doctor can have to do it. And I could imagine Smith doing those conversations, that stuff about, mercy as well as justice prevails in your city, sir, I think would be a really good Matt Smith speech. So all the way through this, I just thought he can fit in really, really well. And particularly playing against the Master, I think he would work really well against Delgado's Master. And finally, that exchange he has with the Master where he says, I don't want to rule the universe, I want to explore it. I would love to see Matt Smith give that speech.
Dare I say, I think it'd make a better story than the one we currently have.
Ooh, controversial. Controversial. But no, you see where I'm coming from.
I do, very much. I can buy that one too. Absolutely.
So where have you put Mr. Smith?
Smithy. Dave, made no bones about him basing his doctor on Troughton. He even has his hair like him in Series 5 to a large degree before he really goes for the quiff sort of look. But more broadly, the goofing around, the hand acting, but also having that slightly darker personality under the surface, or at least being able to drop his voice, sotto voce, and just be a little bit more serious.
We've both latched onto that, haven't we?
Yeah, that's to me, that's very Pat. So I'm looking at Pat's era. And I think something with the Daleks needs to get the chocolates here, because Smithy was so poorly done with Dalek stories. Stuff like Victory of the Daleks and Asylum of the Daleks. I mean, please. So something like Evil of the Daleks has a very cool plot. It has Daleks behaving awesomely. And of course it has the scene where the three Daleks with the human factor activate and they force the Doctor into a game of trains. I mean, that has got Smithy written all over it. Could you imagine Smithy playing trains with some Daleks? And in a purely fantasy sense, this story's mostly missing too. So, to have a Smithy version of it, I think would be something cool in general. But I think, more broadly, I think he just fits in. I think there are some scenes that his Doctor would really play well with, like the train scene. And it's just a hell of a good Dalek story, which, by God, he deserved.
I'm mulling this one over.
Okay.
And I think I'm struggling a little bit because this is one of my absolute favourite stories. And I love Pat in it. So I'm struggling to take Pat out of it.
Mm.
But as I do, I can see where you're going. I can certainly see the dark part of Pat there, the experimenting on his companions.
Yeah.
And you can certainly see Clara filling the Jamie role there of being this pawn the Doctor's using in his plot with the Daleks. That certainly works.
Because it's been a while since I read Evil. Doesn't Jamie not want to travel with the Doctor or something because he gets so mad? Am I misremembering that?
No, that's absolutely right. It's basically the "I don't know who you are anymore" speech.
That's it. Yeah. And we've almost seen Clara do that actually in Capaldi's era.
I think that I wasn't quite over the line on Smith in this, but Smith and Clara together in this, that works.
How about that? Yeah, we've had 6 so far, Dave. 3 Doctors, a choice each. No snaps.
No, and I don't think we're going to get one on this one either, because we might. Who knows? So Peter Capaldi.
Yes.
Along with Smith, Peter Capaldi is one of the 2 that I really struggled to place, and it took me a while to lock him in. But once I worked it out, it made perfect sense to me.
Okay.
A story where the Doctor is a little bit manic, a little bit aggressive, but having a lot of fun.
Sounds like something from the Tom era.
It's from the Troughton era.
Oh, my God, okay.
Very early Troughton. In fact, I'm putting Capaldi into the Highlanders.
Great. Scotland.
He's going to be in Scotland, which fits him perfectly. How good was he in Eaters of Light? He fits in so well in Scotland. But I can imagine Capaldi just pretending to be a German lawyer and bamboozling all the British soldiers. I can imagine Capaldi confronting a solicitor. Yes. Capaldi, the man, the Doctor who famously punched a racist, gets to be the Doctor that beats up a solicitor.
Yes.
And he gets to dress as a washerwoman and play whist, and he gets to let his companions kind of save the day. I think that Capaldi would have so much fun walking around 18th century Scotland in all sorts of costumes, doing funny voices and beating up solicitors. I could just see him doing that, and doing it with such a gleam in his eye. I took a long time to work out where to put Capaldi, but now that I've put him here, perhaps more than any of the others, I want to see this one.
That's brilliant. I think that's your best one so far, Dave.
Oh, thank you.
I like that very, very much, actually. That is fabulous.
Where did you go with Mr. Capaldi?
Well, Capaldi was one of my easier ones. Now I'm not so sure. I I think maybe I've leapt at something early and maybe not given it enough thought when I think of the Highlanders. But Capaldi I see as very Tom-like. Originally I thought he wanted to be a bit Pertwee with the clothes and the hair, going from short to bouffant, but that was more about how he looked. In terms of how he acted, I always felt he had more in common with Tom.
Absolutely.
And that's why when you started describing that last story and I was saying, is it a Tom story? I thought, we could be getting actually close to a snap here, but obviously not. He's capable of a goofy line, but he's equally capable of just losing his temper fairly easily. And so I think of Tom's era and I think, where am I going to put Capaldi? And I'm going to hone in on the Deadly Assassin. Because when Capaldi got to Gallifrey in his era, all he did was act surly and be horrible to Rassilon, who's like, this dead-set Time Lord legend, or at least he's meant to be. I'm not sure what Rassilon's meant to be anymore, actually. But anyway, Capaldi got there. He was just surly. He was horrible to Rassilon. But I think Capaldi on Gallifrey is a bit of a disaster in Hellbent.
Yeah.
Whereas I think the Deadly Assassin would see him there having a really cool adventure, and you'd have all that Time Lord intrigue, you'd have the Master, you'd have the Matrix, and I think Capaldi could get properly angry in places. He could also get to do a bit of physical stuff, like on the train line and stuff like that, which I don't think he got to do a lot of physical stuff in his era. I was trying to think. Like, he ran around a few times, and people would say, he runs like a penguin with its bum on fire, or whatever the expression was. But he didn't really get to be a very, very physical doctor. I mean, you've mentioned he punched the racist in Thin Ice. But on the whole, I don't think he did. So I thought, Deadly Assassin could be Capaldi on Gallifrey doing cool stuff. And I just went there. But again, after the Highlanders, I think maybe I've shortchanged him. But that's my pick. That's what I put in my notes.
No, that one works really well. Don't undersell yourself there, Rob. I'm thinking of absolutely the physical stuff. I think that would be really interesting. But where I think he would shine are some of those witty conversations with some of the Time Lords. The 9 out of 10 conversation with Barusa. I could just imagine him looking back with that Capaldi sparkle, like, did you really go there? Okay, whatever. The slightly fatuous and patronising conversation he has with Runcible. Again, I could just imagine Capaldi in the full Time Lord robes having those conversations. I think that would be really, really fun. And it would fit in really well. Imagine him doing that and then deciding to go retire to become a university professor and meeting Bill. I think it would work really well.
Oh, what a tie-in that would be.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, you've resold me on my own idea.
Well, it's your turn to talk about the current Doctor, Jodie Whittaker.
Yeah, Jodie Whittaker. Jodie's era I see as having parallels with Hartnell and Davison because of the crew size. I'm not saying anything profound here. Loads of fans say it. We've mentioned it a million times on the podcast. And if I was pushed, I think her Doctor and Davo also have similarities, and not just the hair colour. She's not a super forceful personality. She doesn't always win, or at least win satisfactorily. I think there's a lot of Davo in that. So this will probably be no surprise at all. I want to stick Jodie in something like Kinder. I mention Kinder a lot on this show, but it's because it's a good episode. And here, I think it would be an opportunity to stash Graham in the TARDIS like Nyssa and bleed off some of the attention that he was always pulling away from the Doctor, especially in the first series they made. In the second series, they toned it down. But there would be an opportunity for Graham to sort of, just get put in the background for a little while. It would be a chance for Yaz to go centre stage and be possessed by the Mara. I think that would be good because, particularly in the first series, but also in the second series, Yaz was generally not given a lot of stuff to do. And I think Ryan would have an interesting side role, while meanwhile, and this is part of what sold it to me too, the Doctor could team up with someone like Todd in Kinder, although let's sex change Todd to being a man. And have Jodie in a situation with a male character who's not like Graham and is not like Ryan, and just like Davo pinging off Todd in a really cool and different way to how he worked with his own companions. I think that might bring something out of Jodie, and I think that might be really good too. I think it might just open up something in there. So, yeah, I went with Kinder here, Dave.
That works. That really works. I like that. I don't have anything profound to say. It just works for me.
Yeah. I think the big one is just getting Jodie bouncing off someone different. And it worked for Davo in that story. It could work for her.
Well, I went in a very different direction with Jodie.
So we still have no snaps.
We have no snaps. No, we have no snaps. And I note that we have covered 6 of the 7 classic Doctors.
That's pretty neat.
Yeah, which wasn't planned. We just have managed to do that. A couple of Troughtons, a couple of Davos, and a couple of McCoys.
Yeah. Oh, okay. There's a clue.
Because I have put Jodie Whittaker into a McCoy story. I want her in a story where she gets to, again, be the light-hearted person that gets to walk around and just be excited, have some fun, but also to deliver the really strong messages and speeches that I think she's very capable of. And in addition, I want her to come up against a really strong female villain to really, really make that dynamic spark. So I'm putting Jodie into the Happiness Patrol.
I thought you might.
Because I want Jodie to have the fun of wandering around Terra Alpha, just exploring the place. I want Jodie Whittaker in the candy kitchen with the Candyman, just having a whale of a time, doing that goofy smile, just having fun with the Candyman. I think she would be so good as that. But then at the end of the story, she gets to have that confrontation with Helen A. 2 really strong female actors, a goodie and a baddie, talking a moral message. It would give Jodie something really useful to get her teeth into. I could imagine her having the fun playing the harmonica and doing the blues. I could just see Jodie doing this. I think it would work really, really well for her.
Could she do the pull the trigger, take my life?
Oh, absolutely. And
you reckon she could?
Yes, and I think that that's the scene that Chibnall has wanted to write for her for 2 years and hasn't written for her. And one of the reasons why perhaps Jodie hasn't quite landed or clicked or really stamped herself on the role as much as many of us want her to is because she needs a scene like that. And I think if Jodie had a story where she could, have fun with the Candyman, be a bit goofy, be a bit fun, but then have the pull the trigger in my life scene, have the 2 sides of the same coin, happiness doesn't matter unless it exists with sadness, confrontation. I think it would give Jodie the performances that would cement her in the role and that she frankly deserves and hasn't had.
Yeah, that's really nice. I think this is your second strongest pick out of your picks. In my opinion,
Thank you. I've brought it home strongly then.
You have. You've come home on a wet sail there. Yeah, the more I think about that's nice.
Yeah, I think it would be so good for Jodie. But look, I like where you went with all of them, Rob. My favourite, though, is your first. I think you started strong with the massacre for Eccleston. I think you're right. That would be amazing. And I want to see Christopher Eccleston in a 16th century wig and a monk's habit playing the Abbot of Amboise. But also, I want to see him give that speech at the end, the one where Stephen walks out. I want to see him give that monologue. Imagine Christopher Eccleston giving that monologue. It's one of Hartnell's great pieces of dialogue.
Now, they're all gone. All gone. None of them could understand. Not even my little Susan, or Vicky. And as for Barbara and Chesterton, they were all too impatient to get back to their own time. And now, Stephen. Perhaps I should go home, back to my own planet. But I can't.
Yeah, look, and to be fair, that was one of the picks of mine that I took the most time making. So I'm kind of glad it came off, because it seemed a bit crazy at first, but no, I'm happy with it too, just quietly.
So I've been making notes. We've got 2 Troughtons, 2 Toms, 2 Davos, 2 McCoys, a Hartnell and a Pertwee.
So that's interesting. We kind of went for the same doctors, even though we didn't have snaps.
Yeah, but with different people. So we went all over the shop. It's quite interesting. Poor old Colin. No one got put into a Colin story.
Well, because his era is so short, and there's some underwhelming stuff in what's there.
Well, the best part of most of Colin's stories is Colin, so you don't want to take him out of it.
Yeah, that is true as well, actually. Yeah.
Look, I don't have anything more to say. That was really fun. I'm blown away by some of your picks. Delta took my breath away. It really did.
I think it'll work.
I think it'll
work.
As always, yeah, we await listener feedback and your picks and your ideas.
Yeah, I'd really love to hear what listeners make of what we've said and also what they would do themselves. Yeah, please let us know. We'd love to read them out.